So that would fit nicely. The thing about these things, though, is that it's really easy for us all to say, let's do it, but someone's got to do it. Right? And I'll let Councillor Rizan, because it was his really good idea, he might head this up. Because if someone doesn't head it up, then much happens. And a person like Maren could pretty well do it too. So I do really like the idea, and I will support it. But I don't think we can just pass this and then think something's going to happen unless one of us says, "Yep, I'm the person."
I agree. It'll take some active promotion.
But I will do my piece in my school.
Great. Councillor Cannon, will you do your part of the flower store?
Of course I will. That's what I was going to say, that it's all fine in saying that we're going to do it, but we have to have a plan, and someone has to almost organize it so we get everyone online to do it. And as well as the city building here, lights are on timers, I think, in this building. And as well up at the Sunwave, I know a lot of the lights in the change rooms, for instance, go on when you walk in there, so they're off. So getting all the city buildings on task to do this would be something that we'd have to work on for sure. So someone would have to take it on, and I'd be willing to help as well and get the school board on. But I think it would be something good to do. And just like when we were at UBCM, I know it was on the news that the provincial buildings were looking at doing it, but the idea was to turn off all the computer screens at night, and all sounded like a great idea and everyone was going to do it, but I guess it was a security thing that they couldn't turn off their screens in the end. So just little things like that with all the computers in our city hall here, just turning those power as well. So
the challenge does concern signing up the greatest percentage of its BC Hydro accounts. So even if you just sign up and don't do anything, it'll count.
But that's not what we want to
No, that's not
do.
what we
We want to sign up and we want to do it. So maybe perhaps we could get the radio station involved with this, promoting this for us. I mean, they did win an award on the weekend. I think they could help us promote this one.
Yeah, but they want you to leave the radio on, not turn it on. Councillor Elias?
Yeah, I was going to see if we can get Delilah to tell everyone to turn the station off, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's awesome to need not just the radio station. We're also going to need the a little bit too.
Councillor Harrison?
I was going to change the topic, so I'll wait till they're finished.
Is everybody finished on this one? I've got several names up on this, and you'll get the original order back after we're done with this. Councillor Canto?
Now that we got everybody on board here in town, I think that another thing that was mentioned on that same broadcast was, which kind of surprised me, but it makes sense, is even if you have your cell phone charger plugged in, and you just leave it plugged in, or your battery charger, like all of that, it does take power, even if you are not hooking it to your device.
Councillor Stan, this topic? Or?
This topic, I just wanted to say, I think I heard 2 councillors volunteer to head up the committee. So can we move on and work with somebody on staff to get this rolling?
If everybody's done, we can move on. Councillor Stan?
The only comment I wanted to make was when I went to FCM, another big thing that's nationally being promoted, in many cases by celebrities, is a project called Project Porchlight, where you at least change their porch light lighting to compact fluorescence. So certainly that's another thing that I think anybody in the community can look into doing.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Zan, you're next.
That's it.
That's it for you, Councillor Harrison.
On a different topic?
Yes.
Okay, great. Your Worship, we do have several items that I think will be referred to the Budget Committee. Items number 1, number 2, and we talked about number 5 already. So I'm not going to comment on those. Just a general comment, though, we certainly do have a lot of referrals to the Budget Committee, so I think it's going to be a really thorough and difficult task. I just wanted to, for item number 5, we do contribute an operating cost to 30,000. Okay, so that's an annual thing, right? Annual improvements we choose.
Through your worship, normally it's been only 30,000. Last year we did have some additional capital improvements that the city undertook, irrigation, some hand washing stations, and that will all be summarized in the budget. So you'll know the history as well as the current request.
Right, and I think from the letter, Roots and Blues would like to continue with the offering, and they have some other ideas for capital improvements. So, okay, thank you very much.
Your Worship, we did not vote on the motion for BC Hydro.
All in favor? Carried.
Councilor Payne. Thank you, Worship. I also wanted to talk about item 5 a little bit because the letter, first of all, asks for a 5-year commitment, and I gather any commitment we make for 5 years can be changed by any previous council, so I guess we need to make it clear that we'd be making a 2008 budget. And secondly, it asks for some other items. Did they price those other items?
Not with this letter. We have received information from them during this past year, and we will follow up with them to get the additional required information. In terms of a 5-year commitment, council could, if it is entered into a 5-year agreement, which would then bound future councils, or you could do that 1 year.
And then the last I would say about that item is that if we're continuing to do infrastructure improvements to that and green it up and make it nicer for everyday use, because we're not we've leased that land out for $1 a year, is that correct?
That's
To the
correct.
Fall Fair. As long as that's got fences up with chicken wire at the top of them, that's not really public green space or barbed wire. It's not really public green space. I think if we're making a lot of these improvements, I sure like to have our representative at that table start discussing with the Fall Fair that perhaps the protection can be more around the barns and things like that, and the green space can be opened up for some trails and everyday use, because it is our land still, and we do lease it, but we're spending this money on improvements that people look at for a lot of the year and can't access for a lot of the year. So I'd sure like to see some discussion around that. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not saying I do. I just think I'd like to see that discussed. And then the last item I wanted to talk about was, I even forgot, I think, item 13. Knowing that about 21 to 23 cents of every tax dollar goes towards our policing, and knowing that UBCM is working on that significant issue, is there any value in having one of our staff members, perhaps the directors, be in all of these discussions? I'm not sure if staff, that there's any value in being involved in the initial discussions, but knowing what significant impact that has on our budget, I'd sure like to see some improvements in us feeling like we have some control over that issue.
Perhaps staff could come back with a bit of a report
Thank you.
suggesting the suitability. Anything further?
No, thanks.
Councilor Campbell?
Well, as the liaison to Fall Fair, I hear what Councillor Flynn is saying, but one of the major things that the Fall Fair has to consider, and it applies to Roots and Blues as well, is protection of that property and vandalism. And it's a pretty major component to what goes there. And I'm sure the mayor would add this too from the meetings that he did on our behalf. And to just say, I don't think it's a stop, because there is a lot of buildings there, and there's other places perhaps to walk, and I think they'd be hard pressed to. I mean, I can ask them, but there's bigger issues than just people walking on the ground. So I think that it's something that would have to be talked about very, very, very seriously.
In the past, the Fall Fair has been convinced to open several points on the grounds with access gates. One in particular, I remember, being the southwest corner. I have noticed that these gates are quite often locked. It just seems to me vandals quite readily will climb a fence, whereas somebody walking their dog would prefer not to.
I was meaning for the buildings, from that
The
end.
buildings themselves, but the grounds, I think, too, should be accessible. Councilor, anything further?